Hey everybody, so we have what I think is a really fun video for everyone today. I'm going to be talking about young players in the NHL, and I'm going to go through and give you my pick for the best player under the age of 25 on every NHL team. So before we fully get into this video, I just want to quickly ask you guys to please like and subscribe if you haven't already. That really helps out the channel and is greatly appreciated. So basically for this video, I'm going to go through and we have all 31 NHL teams to do. I don't want this video being way too long. So I'm just going to go through each team in alphabetical order, give you my pick and talk a little bit about them, but not go into too much detail because I don't want this video being half an hour long or something ridiculous like that. Before we start, I will say stats are, as of my recording the stats for each player will probably have changed a little bit by the time this video actually drops. So, players will have added to their goals and assist point totals by the time this video actually drops. So the stats that I give you for this season obviously are as of me recording this, not necessarily the same as what they are by the time you're watching this. But anyway, let's get into it here, starting with the Anaheim Ducks. My pick for the best player on Anaheim under the age of 25 is Ondrej Kase. Ondrej Kase is 24 years old. Through 36 games played this season, he's got 3 goals, 11 assists, and 14 points. Now, Anaheim in general is really an interesting roster makeup. They've got some really older guys, and then they've got some real young guys. Of all their young players, I think Kase is the best NHLer at this point. I do think some of the other young players have more potential maybe, but aren't quite there yet. Kase at least has had a 20-goal season at the NHL level. So Sam Steele, another very good young player. Max Comtois obviously has a ton of potential for Anaheim. But as far as best NHLer right now, I think when he's healthy, it's Ondrej Kase. Moving on to Arizona. Arizona was an interesting one to look at because it really came down to 2 players for me. Clayton Keller or Nick Schmaltz. And I went with Nick Schmaltz because I just think he's the better all-around player right now. Keller's obviously a very good goal scorer, but I think Schmaltz is the best all-around NHLer right now for Arizona under the age of 25. He's 23 years old. He's played 44 games this year. He's got 7 goals, 28 assists for 35 points. Schmaltz, is a legitimate top 6 center, maybe a top line center as far as Arizona is concerned. He's a legitimate top line center and a very good player. Moving on now to Boston. Boston, this one's an absolute no-brainer. And the Bruins do have a lot of good players, good young players, but this one is an absolute no-brainer because none of them are on the elite level that David Pastrnak is now at. And listen, David Pastrnak, it's hard to believe he's still only 23 years old. It feels like he's been on the Bruins for years now, and he has, but that's because he made the team as an 18-year-old. Pasternak's still just 23. He's become one of the most elite goal scorers in the NHL. He's got 31 goals this year, 30 assists for 61 points. He leads the league in goal scoring. I don't think it really gets any better than that. Pastrnak is, as much as the Bruins have good young players, Pastrnak is far and away the best one. Buffalo, another easy choice here. No one else comes close to Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, also 23 years old, 42 games played this year, 26 goals, 29 assists for 55 points. Jack Eichel is the Buffalo Sabres. He is having an MVP level season this year. Without a doubt, their best player under the age of 23, under the age of 25. Without a doubt, their best player overall, and one of the best players in the entire NHL. Next up is the Calgary Flames, and I'm going with Matthew Tkachuk on that. Now, Tkachuk is not having as good of a season this year as he had last year. However, he's still just 22 years old. He's got 15 goals, 21 assists for 36 points in 43 games played this year. Last year, he had his first 70-plus point season. So, Tkachuk, while Had a huge year last year, taken a little bit of a step back this year, but the Flames as a whole have taken a little bit of a step back this year. But I still think as far as under 25 players go, Matthew Tkachuk is the best for the Calgary Flames. Now for the Carolina Hurricanes, this one came down to two players as well, similarly to Arizona. It came down to Sebastian Aho or Andrei Svechnikov, and I went with Sebastian Aho because he's doing it 2 years in a row now. Sebastian Aho is just 22 years old. This season, he's got 42 games played. He's got 23 goals, 14 assists for 37 points. And he had a really slow start to the year this year. He did not come out of the gate firing on all cylinders. He's been much better as of late. Last season, he had 83 points last season. He was a point-per-game player last year. Not quite at that level this year so far, but he has played a lot better recently as opposed to the slow start. So I think Aho is going to have a big second half. And as good as Svechnikov is and as great of a goal scorer as it looks like he's becoming, I do think that Aho is the best under 25 player on Carolina. Chicago's next on the list. And this one was an interesting one to look at, but I'm going to stay with Alex DeBrincat. He's 22 years old. He's having a very down year this year compared to what he did last season. But Chicago as a whole is a last-place team, not performing at that high of a level. I think overall DeBrincat is going to be a elite goal scorer at the NHL level. Through 43 games this year, he's got 10 goals and 20 assists for 30 points, which really isn't all that good compared to the 41 goals that he had last season. I'm not giving up on DeBrincat. I think he's going to be a 30 to 40 goal scorer year in and year out. 41's really, really high. I don't necessarily think he's going to match that every year, but I do think that normally he's going to be good for 30 to 40 goals every single season. This year just been a down one, but has been a down one for a lot of Blackhawks players. Colorado, obviously Colorado is a team loaded with young talent, but none stick out the way that Nathan MacKinnon does. Nathan MacKinnon at 24 years old. Another guy, it's hard to believe he's still under 25. He's been in the league for a long time now, but he has exploded onto the scene the last couple of years as one of the top players in the entire NHL. I think Nathan MacKinnon right now is a top 5 player in the NHL. Not just under 25, not just among young guys, a top 5 player in the NHL. McKinnon's on pace, I think, right now to win MVP this season. He's played 43 games. He's got 25 goals, 39 assists for 64 points, and is, I think, leading the MVP race right now in the NHL. For Columbus, there were a couple options with Columbus, but I am going with Zach Werenski, the first defenseman to make this list. He's 22 years old. Through 36 games, he's got 13 goals and 13 assists for 26 points. He's also a very good two-way player. He's not just an offensive defenseman. He can play in his own end as well. He's at 22, he's already a top-pair NHL defenseman and would be a top-pair defenseman on pretty much any team in the league. Very, very strong player, and I think he's Columbus's best under 25 player. For Dallas, we've got another defenseman, and it's Miro Heiskanen. Miro Heiskanen has had a great start to his NHL career. He's just 20 years old. He's already a top pair defenseman for Dallas. A top pair defenseman, I think, pretty much anywhere in the league. Through 42 games played this season, he's got 7 goals and 15 assists for 22 points. Solid two-way player, solid top pair guy. And very, very good young defenseman for the Dallas Stars. Now, for the Detroit Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings are another team with a good amount of young talent. They're obviously the worst team in the league this year. They've still got a long way to go, but their prospect pool and their young talent is very, very strong in my opinion. And if you've been on this channel before, you've heard me talk about Detroit, you probably know who I'm going to pick. I am a huge Dylan Larkin fan. Dylan Larkin, 23 years old still. I think a huge leader of this team and the guy going forward that they are building around. not having a huge year offensively this year. Tyler Bertuzzi's actually been better offensively, but as far as all-around player goes, I think it's Dylan Larkin for Detroit. 43 games played, 10 goals, 17 assists for 27 points. Obviously, he's playing on a horrible team. So, that's going to affect his offensive output. But overall, I think Larkin is the future in Detroit. Edmonton, this is a no-brainer. I don't think I even need to say this. Connor McDavid, 22 years old. He's got 45 games played this year, 24 goals, 45 assists for 69 points. Connor McDavid is not only the best player on Edmonton under 25, he's not only the best player in the league under the age of 25. Connor McDavid is simply the best player in the league, leads the league in points. No one else comes close. Not that no one else comes close in points, but in my mind, no one else comes close as far as best player in the league. It's Connor McDavid. For the Florida Panthers, I am going with Alexander Barkov. Alexander Barkov has been one of the most underrated players in the league now for the last couple of years. A superstar for Florida. He's 24 years old. Through 42 games played this year, he's got 13 goals and 32 assists for 45 points. He's over a point per game. He had a spectacular season last year as well. I believe he was over 90 points last season. But Barkov is just becoming one of the top centers in the league. Los Angeles. Now, LA, this one's a little tough. LA doesn't have much going for it right now. And they're an old team as well. They don't have a lot of young players there with the Kings. So I was a little limited on choices, but under 25, I am going with Adrian Kempe, who's 23 years old. He's played 43 games this year with the Kings. He's got 8 goals, 9 assists for 17 points. I think he's a solid young player. He's not somebody that I really see becoming a superstar or a huge point producer or anything, but I do think he can be a solid middle of the lineup guy, somebody who maybe as he develops can become a 20 goal scorer, maybe a 40 to 50 point guy. I think that's what the Kings potentially have in the future with Adrian Kempe. Minnesota Wild. So for Minnesota, they're another team that's acquired some young players over the years. But I am going with Kevin Fiala as their best, who they got in a trade with Nashville. Kevin Fiala is 23 years old. He's played 38 games this year. He's got 9 goals, 16 assists for 25 points. Minnesota's not a team that scores a lot, not a team that racks up a ton of points. So to have 25 points on Minnesota is pretty good for Fiala. He's a good goal scorer, and I think their best under 25 player. Next up is the Montreal Canadiens, and this one for me was pretty easy, Max Domi. Max Domi, very, very good young player. 24 years old, 43 games played this year, 12 goals, 20 assists for 32 points. Not having quite as good of a year as he did last year offensively, which last season was really his breakout year where he had, I believe, 72 points. I don't think he'll match that point total this year, but he should be over 60. And again, I think Domi is, their best young player and, probably one of their best players overall on that team. Next is the Nashville Predators. Now, Nashville is a team that really doesn't have a whole lot of players under the age of 25 on their roster. They're a veteran-led team. And so I didn't have a ton of choices, but I am going with defenseman Dante Fabro for Nashville's best player under 25. He's 21 years old in his first full season in the NHL. He's played 39 games this year. He's got 4 goals and 5 assists for 9 points. Also a strong defensive player. He's very much a two-way defenseman. He's a strong guy in his own end. Not a guy I necessarily think you're going to see a lot of offensive output from the back end. I do think he plays better in his own end than he does in the offensive end. But Fabro, solid young defenseman for the Predators. Came into the playoffs last year when the college season ended. He came from Boston University. Really solid young guy that I look to see improve a lot over the next few years. For the New Jersey Devils, I am going with Nico Hischier, the former first overall pick. He's 21 years old. Through 36 games played this season, he's got 9 goals and 15 assists for 24 points. Obviously, this year has not gone the way New Jersey has wanted it. There's not a ton of high offensive output on the New Jersey Devils. He sure is one of their better offensive players. So, yeah, I think when it comes to under 25 guys, he sure is the best on the Devils. For the New York Islanders, this one to me was a pretty easy decision. Matt Barzal. I absolutely love what I've seen from Matt Barzal so far in his NHL career. He's 22 years old. He leads the team in points with 34 this season. He's played 41 games, 16 goals, 18 points for 16 goals, 18 assists for 34 points. Leads the team, as I said. He, I think, is their best offensive player, and he's certainly their best player under the age of 25. For the New York Rangers, this one might be a bit of a shock to some people or a surprise, but I am going with Tony DeAngelo as the best under 25 player on the Rangers. He's 24 years old. He's really, really coming into his own as a defenseman in the NHL. He's been in the league for a number of years now, but he's really had a solid season last year, and now this year has really been like his coming out party at the NHL level. Through 41 games played, he's got 8 goals and 21 assists for 29 points already for the Rangers this season. He's been absolutely outstanding. He's absolutely become a top 4 defenseman at the NHL level. And he's entering that age now into the mid-20s where you've really arrived, and DeAngelo's arrived. He also plays with an edge. He plays physically, isn't afraid to drop the gloves when he needs to. I'm a huge, huge fan of Tony DeAngelo, and I think he's going to be a solid defenseman for the Rangers in the future. Next up is the Ottawa Senators. Now, this one came down to 2 players as well. It was either Brady Tkachuk or Thomas Chabot. And overall, I think Brady Tkachuk is the best player that they have under the age of 25. He was a top 5 draft pick, 20 years old. He's got 42 games played this season, 13 goals, 11 assists for 24 points. I think he's going to develop into a yearly 30-goal scorer, and also a guy that can get under the opponent's skin, play physically, fight when he needs to, throw big hits when he needs to. Kachuk's just an incredible all-around player, and I think he's a huge building block for the Ottawa Senators going forward. Next up is the Philadelphia Flyers, and I had choices with Philadelphia. Ivan Provorov, a really good young defenseman. Travis Konechny having an incredible breakout season this year, goal-scoring wise, and really a solid top-line goal scorer now. But I am going with the goaltender, Carter Hart, with Philadelphia. Carter Hart, I think, is the goaltender that Philly has, the franchise goaltender that Philly has been looking for 20 years now, really 20 years now, and I think they finally have it with Carter Hart. He came into the league last year in the second half of the season at 20 years old. He's 21 now, and I really think he's going to develop into a top-tier NHL goalie. At 21 years old, he's got 26 games started this season, 13 wins, 10 losses, 3 OT losses, a very good, respectable goals against average of 2.61 and a .905 save percentage. Certainly not Vezina level numbers from Hart, certainly not elite numbers from Hart, but he's only 21 years old. He's only going to continue to get better, and he is, doing the job for Philadelphia this year, and as of right now, they are a playoff team. Pittsburgh, I am going with Jared McCann for Pittsburgh. He's 23 years old. He's played 40 games this season. He's got 11 goals, 13 assists for 24 points. I think Jared McCann is a very solid player for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and just their best guy. Pittsburgh doesn't have a lot of their guys are in their mid-20s now, so they don't have a lot of these under 25 guys. But I think McCann stands out as far as that goes. San Jose, for the San Jose Sharks, this is an easy decision. Timo Meier, 23 years old. Had his first 30-goal season last year. This year, through 44 games, he's got 14 goals and 14 assists for 28 points. So another good goal-scoring year in the works for Timo Meier. I think he's a fantastic player. For St. Louis, another team that doesn't have a whole lot of these young guys, but I'm going to go with Robert Thomas, who's only 20 years old. Played pretty well last year for the Blues and in the playoffs on the Stanley Cup run. Really having a breakout season this year as far as points go. 38 games played. He's got 7 goals, 14 assists for 21 points this year. I think he's going to be a real strong, probably second-line player for St. Louis. I think that's probably where he caps out, but a very good second-line player at that. For Tampa Bay, this one to me was pretty easy. It's Braden Point. Braden Point's only 23 years old. One of the best players on the Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the top players in the league. He had 92 points last season. Not quite at that level scoring-wise so far this season, but Tampa Bay as a whole had a very slow start to the year. 17 goals, 18 assists for 35 points so far for Braden Point. And he probably won't match his point total from last season, but I do think as the years goes along, he's going to be consistently a 90-plus point player. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, this one, again, pretty easy. Austin Matthews. Austin Matthews is an elite NHL goal scorer at just 22 years old. He's played 44 games this season. He's got 29 goals, 23 assists for 52 points. One of the top young goal scorers, not just young goal scorers, one of the top goal scorers in the NHL. Just a fantastic player in Toronto. For Vancouver, I have their best under 25 player being Elias Pettersson. I think he really is the future of that team going forward and who they're going to build around. He's having a very good season this year, his best season currently at the NHL level. He's 21 years old. He's got 42 games played this year, 19 goals, 25 assists for 44 points. Over a point per game for Pettersson this year. Just incredibly good player. Vegas, for Vegas, I am going with Shea Theodore. Easily a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. Probably, at least with Vegas, he's a top pair level defenseman. 24 years old, 45 games played this year, 6 goals, 19 assists for 25 points so far. Very good in his own end as well. Does bring some offense, good skating ability, but also can play well defensively. And I think he's their best player under 25. Washington, this one to me was a pretty easy decision. Jakub Vrana. Vrana is becoming one of the, really developing into a very solid young goal scorer. He's only 23 years old. 43 games played this year, 18 goals, 16 assists for 34 points. He's got a chance to reach 30 goals this year, a legitimate chance to be a 30-goal scorer this year. Actually, he probably will. So I think Jakub Vrana is a very good young goal scorer for the Capitals. And finally, the Winnipeg Jets. This one came down to 2 players. It's either Patrick Laine or Kyle Connor. I'm going with Patrick Laine because I love the all-around game that I'm seeing from Laine this season. Laine, for his first few years in the NHL, was pretty much strictly a goal scorer. There were a lot of questions about his play in the defensive zone and can he be a two-way player? He pretty much scored goals and that was it. Laine this year is back with a much improved all-around game. He's playing much better defensively. His goal scoring's actually gone down. He only has 15 goals on the year, but his assist totals are way up. He's got 25 assists. His point totals are up. He's got 40 points in 41 games. Patrick Laine, you have to love what you're seeing from him if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan. He is a much better all-around player this year. And I love what I see from this 21-year-old. I think he's going to be a much better all-around player for the future now that he's learning to do this at such a young age, that he's got to play well defensively. He's got to be able to do more than just score goals. And I think he's really figuring those other parts of his game out this season. So Patrick Laine is my choice there. So those are my picks for the best player on each NHL team under the age of 25. Let me know what I got right. Let me know what I got wrong. Your picks down in the comment section below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.